7:15 a.m. Blood moon pack. A girl lays on the cold, freezing ground, her breath coming out heavy as she tries to move. Her muscles sore with the punishment, lips cracked and dried. She pulls on her arms to hear the cranking of steel chains tied around her hands and legs. 12 hours 42 minutes, the exact time she has been tied here, to serve her punishment ordered by the Alpha. And this was not the first time anyway. She was used to the treatment till now. After all, she was just a weak Omega in the strongest pack in the world. This was inevitable. She was thirsty, and her senses were playing games with her. She gulped and tried to moisten her lips, but they only aggravated it. What a shame, Thora. Had you accepted my offer, you would have been enjoying the luxury of my mattress right now. A voice speaks from behind her, and she already knew who it was. Her tormentor, her Alpha. She refuses to reply, let alone look at him, and this didn't settle well with him. Placing a bottle of water in front of her, he crouches at her level, an evil smirk present on his lips. Thirsty princess? Here, have it. She knew better. Nothing comes for free. Nothing except pain and sufferings. He studied her dropping brown eyes and trembling body. The thought of her being helpless and completely at his mercy, exciting him. Opening the cap, he gulps the liquid to only leave a sip in the end. Moving the brim to her lips, he urges her to take it. She bites her lip, looking up at him, and her beautiful brown eyes lock on him. Defiance and confidence. So much broken, yet so much still to break. Ruined, but only partially. Used, but not surrendered. Stuck it up your nose. Her words surprise him, and he chuckles getting up. Whenever he thinks he has broken her, she comes back, stronger and braver. A weak Omega by strength, but a strong-willed by brain. Interesting. Okay, princess, if you don't like my generosity, I won't be offering you any. His voice turns cold as he continues, fingers placed on her chin to make her look up at him. 12 hours more and the lashes will be complimentary. She will not be able to remain conscious after this, she already knows. But her eyes refuse to lower down in submission. She will die before she accepts defeat to a man like him. He leaves her chin and stares at her for a minute, and then leaves as the first rays of sunlight penetrate to melt the freezing snow surrounding her. Her body continues to tremble, and soon she falls into a deep slumber. Do you want me to wake her up? No need. Call the pack doctor and let him check on her. Once done, escort her to her quarters. The guard nods and leaves, closing his door. Alpha Landon sighs and looks down at the paper in his hands. Invitation to the Alpha King and members of the Werewolf Council. The Alpha King was coming to his territory with his council members. He hopes he is satisfied and gives him the approval on the latest pack acquisition deal. If he gets it, Red Moon Pack will be not only the strongest, but also the largest pack in werewolf history. It will be his biggest milestone. Smiling to himself, he places the invitation card in the drawer. Landon Anderson was a true beast in all senses, and no one knew of him better than the girl that has seen his worst. The Omega, who he tried his best to break, but failed, even after 7 years of his tortures and games. Was she truly indestructible, or was it just a facade? For even rocks break when subdued to high temperatures and pressures, and what she had suffered was way more than it. Landon sat on his seat, waiting for the Alpha King's arrival, his eyes landing on Thora, who stood beside him in his chosen dress. A small maid dress, the blouse tight, highlighting her thin yet perfect figure. You are to serve them the drinks and food. No mistakes will be tolerated. Am I clear? She nods, not in the mood to fight with him after the punishment last night. The whip marks still fresh on her back. Good. Now come here. He says with a smirk, and she already knew what this was about. Grabbing her from her waist, he makes her land on his lap. Before she could react, he has crashed his lips on her. Thrashing was no use. She was used to his behavior till now. Laying still, she allows him to kiss her. But then, all of a sudden, her weak wolf thrashed in her mind and she started pushing him back. This was not right. She doesn't feel right. Landon leaves and smirks, looking at the entrance, and that's when she felt her senses freeze all of a sudden. No, this can't be. Pinewood and rain fragrance hits her in full force and she clenched her fists. "Greetings, Alpha King," Landon spoke. And that was it. Her whole world collapsed right there. The mate she thought would protect her has seen her kissing another man the very first time they met. And what did he say? Alpha King? Vulcan? No, he can't be. A powerful man? Impossible. It must be one of the other men in his council. She didn't dare to look back. Her mind frozen. Vulcan, her mate's aura surrounding her in deadly waves, making her wish this ground to open and swallow her down. Vulcan didn't speak, his silence making her more nervous. Landon stares at her confused and then whispers in her ear, making her body to tremble. Turn around and greet the Alpha King. He doesn't take disrespect lightly. But she couldn't. She can't see those eyes staring at her in hatred. She can't let her only hope of escaping this hell die. Before she could say another word, Landon's arm coiled around her waist, and he turned her around. Bow. He orders and she does, keeping her eyes to the floor. She could feel a burning gaze on her, and she knew then, Vulcan, the Alpha King, would hate her. "I have been waiting for you, sir. Please take a seat." Should I look up at him? Who is he? That stare. It's burning and suffocating. I have to look up. But I am an Omega. Will it be considered disrespect? Thora was debating in her mind when she felt a rough grip on her arm. She flinched as Landon whispered in her ear, "Get the drinks. Don't stand like a fool here." And that's all Thora needed. Without looking back at those burning eyes, she scurried down the hall, arranging for the starters. Her heart beating heavily in her chest as she leans her head on the wall. Sitting down on the table, Vulcan takes deep breaths to calm his wolf. The very thought of his mate, loosing her virginity to some jerk, making a fire of fury to burn in him. Had she already betrayed me? I've waited for her since so many years, yet she couldn't wait for me? Sleeping around with other men to satisfy her heat. The meeting progressed, and Vulcan's council members started discussing while he remained silent, his mind lost in assumptions and betrayals. When suddenly the door opens and her scent hits Vulcan before he sees Thora. So addicting, yet impure and defiled. Thora steps forward, balancing a tray in her hands. Her hands shaking as she walks with those high 4-inch heels, making her legs to look longer. Her hair were veiling her face as Vulcan stared at those downcast eyes. "Hurry up," Landon says, and she again nods like an obedient pet, lowering her eyes to the floor. Vulcan's beast was struggling, seeing her getting ordered around like this, her being so submissive to him, like the jerk Landon owned her. "I have to leave. My emotions are going out of control." Vulcan gets up to leave when he almost crashed into her as he turned. "Ah!" Thora shrieks in surprise. The champagne glasses shattering as they hit the floor, and the sound of the tray hitting the floor, echoing in the corridor. Vulcan's breathing stopped for a second as he saw Thora staring at him. Her innocent eyes meeting Vulcan, and his wolf going crazy in his mind. Mate, mate. Her mouth opening and closing in shock as she realized who Vulcan was. Her mate, the man she had already betrayed. I am sorry. Thora stutters, her eyes looking innocent and beautiful. She looks lower to stare at Vulcan's tuxedo, and bravely takes a napkin from the table and dabs it on his chest, trying to clean the stain on his shirt. "Please, I am really sorry. I was not looking." Her fingers touch Vulcan's chest, and that's when what they call the explosion of tingles blasted in full force. Thora freezes, and her hands stop, as she looks up at Vulcan, shocked and surprised, while he stepped back, making hurt and pain flood through her innocent eyes. Her fingers stopped in midair, and she clenched her hand, while Vulcan continued to look at her in indifference and coldness. "Thora!" Landon screams, and she starts apologizing again. "Alpha, I beg pardon, she is." Vulcan barely shows Landon his hand, and Landon stops in between. Thora looks down at the broken pieces of glass, her hands fidgeting as she sits down to pick them up and place them in the tray. Vulcan looked down at her picking up the broken pieces of glass near his feet, and he saw the other men staring at her behind. He clenched his fist. The pathetic excuse of her tunic was hiding nothing, and his beast was infuriating. He wanted to kill his own men because of her. Vulcan has to leave. Sidestepping her, Vulcan leaves the meeting as murmurs follow behind him. But he didn't care. He has to leave before his beast is unleashed, and this place turns into a bloodbath. Going away from her scent, Vulcan's senses calmed down as he shifted into his wolf, approaching the bordering forest. His paws hit against the ground, and the cold winds on his fur calms his chaotic mind. Vulcan has to meet Thora once, to know if she has really betrayed him. And with this thought, Vulcan roared, looking at the moon, making the ground to shake under his feet. Sighing, Thora looks up at the full moon, wondering what will her future hold. "He already hates me. I saw it in his eyes. He thinks I have betrayed him. If only he knew the truth. My mate is going to reject me." Her thoughts were interrupted when Thora felt a strong gust of wind hit her, Vulcan's tempting scent lingering with it. Knowing what it meant, Thora stood up. She looked around to sense Vulcan, when her eyes stop at a silhouette near a tree. Vulcan's back leaning against it, and hands crossed in front of his chest. Thora gulped, moving closer. No man will accept a used mate. He was not going to be an exception. "Alpha, King, you needed something. You should have sent someone for it," Thora says, bowing down in respect. Vulcan was a powerful man, the most powerful man in their kingdom instead, and Omegas like Thora are killed for even making eye contact with him. Vulcan didn't say anything, but his stare remained, making a strange feeling to erupt in Thora. "Let me know if I can help you. Do you need?" "Shut up," Vulcan says, making Thora's trap to shut and mind to freeze. Goosebumps appear on her skin and she bites her lips, and the silence stretches, making her anxiety to increase with every second. Few minutes later, Vulcan straightens his back and stands up, making his way towards Thora. Her eyes remain rooted to the ground as he steps closer. The storm of anxiety in her chest, thrashing. "Have you slept with him?" Vulcan asks, and Thora's heart stops. Her widened eyes look up at his cold gray eyes, and she forgot to breathe for a few seconds. So direct? How does she answer this? Yes, she had, but not willingly. He blackmailed her. We, a few times, but I didn't. Thora stutters to only make his jaw to harden. Vulcan's closeness plays with her brain, her body aching for him. What was happening? And then Thora remembered. It was a full moon today. The mate bond is the strongest. Yes or no? Vulcan commands, and Thora lowers her stare. Yes, Thora says, and she sees his fist clench. She steps back, afraid she will be a target of it. Vulcan, again, doesn't say anything for a minute, making her legs to lose their strength and her wolf to cry in her mind. She was already very weak. She can die if Vulcan rejects her. "I waited 26 years for you, not even touching a woman, fearing I will be betraying you. Yet you couldn't save yourself for me?" Vulcan says, and Thora is surprised. It's very rare, Men's instincts are way stronger than women, and Thora has never heard of any man controlling his urges and saving his first for his mate. Yet he did it. But for whom? For Thora? I am sorry. Vulcan raises his hand again, not letting Thora explain. Do you love him? Vulcan asks, and Thora's mouth opens in surprise. Which mate asks another if they love someone else? Thora can see he is stopping himself, or she would have been already rejected by him before this conversation. No, Yet you kiss him back. Yet you don't stop him from kissing you? Thora gulps, moving her head in a no as Vulcan steps closer to her. Alpha, King, please. Yet you sit in his lap wearing these clothes and let him kiss these lips? Thora's back hits a tree bark, and Vulcan's eyes change colors. Please. Tell me. Is he the only one, or do you love doing this with others when you are in heat? How many jerk have touched what only belonged to me? Calm down, Alpha. Please. Vulcan slams the tree bark on Thora's either side, and she flinches in fear. His arms imprisoning Thora as he moves his face closer. His breath hits Thora's lips as his eyes are pools of hatred, shifting between gray and black, trying to get back his lost control. Thora breathes heavily, unable to hold it in any longer. Tears run down her eyes as she closes them, done with all this. She should have known this. Vulcan is an alpha. It would be a blessing if he doesn't kill Thora after this betrayal. Just reject me. Thora manages to whisper in her shaking voice, her lips wobbling. Vulcan freezes at her words, but Thora refused to open her eyes. She doesn't want to see the hatred in them. She has seen enough in her life. Not his as well. Let him just reject her and get this over with. I will. Vulcan says, and her wolf whines in her mind. Not ready to die so young. But he continues, making Thora's teary eyes to look back at him. After I have showed you how much your betrayal has hurt me. After I have returned 100 times of what you gave me. His hands moves lower to rest on Thora's waist, and it tingles, make a warmness to spread inside her. After I have made you to beg me to touch you, and after I have replaced you. Though, Thora's eyes widen, and the warmness inside her freezes. The butterflies in her stomach die down as she looks in those beautiful orbs in helplessness. No, he can't. I have already suffered so much. Please no. And that's when his lips crash on Thora and her body is pushed back on the tree bark, to experience what they call a kiss of true love. If only it was of love and not coated by hate. If only I was truthful and I hadn't betrayed. Then Landon stares at the Alpha King sitting in front of him. Confusion evident in his eyes as he dares to question him again. My apologies, Alpha King, but did I hear you right? You want to take that Omega along with you? Vulcan just stares at him harder, his words an evidence to his irritation. Yes, the girl is to come with me, and in exchange, you will be given the tender to the Redwood territory. Landon couldn't believe this. Thora was a used and broken, pathetic Omega of his pack. What could a powerful man like Vulcan had to do with her? The offer sounds quite attractive, Alpha King, but may I know why? Vulcan clenches his fist, not happy with him questioning him. But he can't tell anyone she's his mate. He was ashamed to be honest. Foul mouth. You know I don't take disrespect lightly, yet she dares to disrespect me. I will deal with her my way in my territory. My apologies, Alpha King. This girl's audacity. I can punish her if you say. No need. I will take care of it myself. But what if I say no, Alpha King?